Michael Fabricant is the Conservative MP for Lichfield, which borders Chris Pincher's constituency of Tamworth. He joins us now. Morning, Michael.
Good morning, Rick.
What impact is all of this having on the party?
Well, it's certainly very, very disturbing. On the one hand, of course, we're all very sorry for people who've been affected by Chris's actions, but we also, quite frankly, feel very sorry for Chris in many ways. This is being driven most of the time, it seems, by drink. And I know now that he's seeking, he's not seeking, he's actually sought and is already in contact with a clinical psychiatrist regarding treatment.
Why do you think it's taken him so long to seek out this treatment?
Well, so many people deny, don't they, to themselves when they've got an illness like this. I understand that, Chris doesn't drink at home when he's on his own, but like many people, sometimes the drink goes too far when he's in a social situation, which can lead and did in some circumstances lead to other things. But, he's not the only one to suffer from that.
Cannot be an excuse for this alleged behaviour.
Of course not, but it's an explanation. And, that's why many of us, do feel that Chris, sadly, is also in his own way a victim, believe it or not.
We now know that an official complaint was made about Chris Pincher in 2019 when he was at the Foreign Office, and that Boris Johnson was briefed in person about that. Does that suggest an error of judgment at the very least from the Prime Minister in subsequently appointing him as Deputy Chief Whip?
Well, it's interesting that because, I've been in the Whip's office for 7 years, and I've noticed that quite often it's being reported that as the Deputy Chief Whip, he was in charge of the welfare of MPs. Well, he wasn't in charge of the welfare of MPs, actually. There's another whip who's doing that, who's a lady. Was it an error of judgment? Well, it seems that the complaint that was made against Chris Pincher wasn't so serious that it warranted disciplinary action. And that the victim, I know it always seems a very extreme word to use, but the victim in this case didn't want to take it any further anyway. What was the nature of the briefing in person to Boris Johnson? Who knows? Maybe someone just said, well, this was going on, it's not being taken any further. That's that. And you've got to bear in mind, a Prime Minister is dealing with many other things than just Chris Pincher. It was the beginnings of COVID at that time. He's dealing with diplomatic issues and all the rest that prime ministers deal with. So, no, given that actually he was being told the issue was not being taken any further, why shouldn't he make him Deputy Chief Whip? He'd been Deputy Chief Whip before.
Well, why do you think he was using a kind of suggestive nickname about him?
Well, if I had a name like Pinch or Pincher, I'm sure I would make fun of that name too. And I'm afraid it is in the nature of Boris Johnson and the rather childish things that sometimes happen in the House of Commons, which you will be the first person to be aware of, is rather like a school that people do make fun of people's names.
Is this a cultural problem in Westminster?
Well, that's a very good point you make. And that's really what I was getting at when I was talking about the nature of the place. I think there is a cultural problem. And it's not just in Westminster, there have been similar instances of this kind in the US Capitol, in Washington, D.C. and other places. I think it is because of the long hours. I didn't get back home last night till about 11:30. I had something to drink with dinner and so on and so forth. And I'm afraid that's really, unless we can't really make it a 9-to-5 job. We'd never get the legislation through. And time again, you would have heard women and other people say we can't have a proper family life because of it. But as I say, it's not just that this happens in the UK. It happens in other countries too, because of the nature of the long hours that we spend.
But let's focus on the UK, though. Does this weaken the Prime Minister's position? It feels like he's already vulnerable.
I think if Chris Pincher had been found guilty and had been disciplined of a serious misdemeanor, and not even misdemeanor, but had been found guilty of actions he'd taken at the Foreign Office, and then was made Deputy Chief Whip, that would in fact reflect badly on the Prime Minister. But he wasn't. And that's the point. He wasn't. They did the inquiry. All the processes went through. The person who raised the issue in the first place said, well, he didn't want to take it further anyway. And it was not regarded as being a particularly serious offence, just inappropriate. And we don't know, I don't know, what exactly it was that Chris Pincher did anyway. It may not have involved any physical contact. It may have been a suggestion. Who knows?
These current allegations, though, are serious. You'll agree with that. And by slightly, I think, characterising Mr. Pincher as being a victim, are you not minimising the seriousness of these allegations?
No, but what I am saying is...
But he is not the victim here, is he?
I'm saying that nothing is black and white in this world. If only it were that simple. It isn't that simple. And I think that the way he has been characterised, particularly in the newspapers, not by the BBC, but in the newspapers, where they've raised cases where even the victim has said, well, actually, it didn't happen, this instance. It does make me wonder precisely, who is the guilty party, who is the innocent party, and whether it is wholly that Chris Pincher is someone, who has is in that position.
So you don't trust what the victims are saying?
No, I do trust what the victims are saying, because some of the victims, and I'm using victims in inverted commas, have since said they weren't victims. It now seems. So simply I'm saying let's have open minds about this, and let's not be so quick always, not just in the case of Chris Pincher, but in other cases too, to rapidly jump to judgment. There are processes to go through. The instance we've heard about in the Foreign Office, a process did go through, and it was found that it really was not worth proceeding any further, and that was with the agreement of the victim, again in inverted commas. And I just think, look, we're not tabloid newspapers. Justice has to be done, and justice works both ways. And, the thing with Boris Johnson is he believes you're innocent until you're proven guilty. And in the instance we've been talking about this morning, it turns out that, Chris Pincher was innocent of anything that would require disciplinary action.
Thanks very much for your time this morning, Michael. That's Michael Fabricant, Conservative MP for Lichfield.